Greetings. This is Shquestra, Voices from Wise Women. And my guest today is Stephanie Holmes. We're going to talk about mother-daughter relationships. So, before we start, we always do our 30-second meditation. I also pulled cards. So today the card says, I have the perfect living space, which is great because some of us are looking for a new space. And I'm thinking about changing my space around a little bit. So this is definitely a perfect card for me about the perfect living space. Some things I want to change in my space. And today on the calendar says, my family totally supports me in fulfilling my dreams, and I am so grateful. So sometimes we don't have our immediate family supporting us, but we do have our tribal family. So there's always someone that's usually supporting you, or an aunt, uncle, your tribal family. You have to sometimes make your own family. So let's do our 30 seconds of meditation to bring ourselves into the room, to calm ourselves down, and so we can have a great show. So here we go. All right. So let me just set it all up so we are ready to share to everybody. All right, we are here and ready to go. All right. So talked about our card, we talked about a nice smudge in my room, and we are ready to go and talk about mother-daughter relationships. So, Stephanie, introduce yourself.
My name is Stephanie Holmes, and I am a Shquestra Satawi's daughter. I mean, I don't know how much more intro I need than that. Okay. That's a pretty big deal.
All right, well, that's nice to hear. I want to just talk a little bit. We want to talk about mother-daughter relationships because I know a lot of people don't have a good relationships with their mothers. And I've been fortunate to have a decent relationship with my mother. And I think Stephanie feels like she has a relationship with me. And I know she has a great relationship with her daughters as well. And I think part of it has to do with us not judging each other. And I think it has to do with us not pushing buttons to each other. I think because sometimes we know we can push buttons on another person, and I think we don't do that. I think we don't have a lot of arguments. Sometimes we do disagree or whatever. Maybe we just like pull back a little bit, but we don't do this arguing and screaming or any of those kinds of things. We just kind of say, well, I just disagree with you, and we kind of move on from that. I think I want to say to people that mothers are doing the best they know how. And I think when mothers know better, they do better. And there's a number of things that I did that I would do differently now that I know what I know. And then sometimes we only do what we can with the resources that we have, or the financial resources that we do have. I think that I was always, as a mother, trying to be creative. There was two things that were very important to me in raising my child, and that was that she had a great education and she had a safe place to live. Those were two things that were very, very important to me. And I think I went above and beyond my to make sure that she had a great education. I did not have the financial resources that I wanted, so I got great public schools that she went to. It wasn't easy. Sometimes we had to manipulate some things about where she lived and what have you. Because now people are getting arrested for that and spending, years in jail. But we were able to find people in our community that we were able to use their addresses and what have you. And she was able to go to various schools. And she went to some great schools because that was important to me that she had a great foundation for her reading. So she's an excellent reader, and she's also a great writer. And so that was important to me for her to have that. Now, Stephanie, did you feel that the schools you went to were great schools because you're the one that had it? I thought they were great schools. They were great schools.
No, I thought they were good schools. Of course, being a kid at the time, you just like school is crappy no matter what. But thinking back now on some stuff that I was just like frustrated with, yeah, those were really good schools. They were nice and diverse, which is good. So I thought I was well-rounded in terms of encountering various people from various backgrounds, because I met a lot of folks from all kind of backgrounds. And then some of the curriculum that I was exposed to, I didn't realize the exposure until later when I got older and I started having conversations with people about things that I learned in school and they had no clue. And I'm like, didn't you have that as a course? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, wow. And I just didn't realize how much of an advantage it was just to know what I thought was basic stuff, but was really considered stuff that other schools weren't teaching kids at all, especially kids that look like me.
Right. So and I think part of that,
thank you.
Part of that had to do with, I think that my parents sent us to really good public schools, and I think I wanted that same kind of atmosphere for you. I know when the first school you went to was Sojourner Truth, which is a school in Hyde Park that no longer exists, but it was like a day school, and it was really good for you. But then I wanted you to have more of a Black background. So then we sent you to Lincoln Center, and Lincoln Center was kids from the projects and everywhere else. And so, because I wanted you to toughen up a little bit with that, and so you were able to like hold your own in that school, and then I was able to shift you to another school. And a lot of times it was because we were moving as well, because I'm kind of a nomad. And I think about that too, when I was like, oh my God, I was always a nomadic kind of person, and trying different things and moving across country and what have you. And I wonder, did that affect you as a child, where you thought, oh my God, my mom's always moving, from the West Coast to the Midwest or wherever? How did that affect you as a child?
When I was younger, I thought it was like an adventure. I remember telling people I went to 3 different schools for 3rd grade because we moved just that much that one year. And it didn't really bother me too much because I was a shy kid, but I kind of made friends pretty easy. The only time that I probably had an issue was when, of course, the teenage years, when it's a little rough anyway. And we moved from one state to another, and I ended up going to a school kind of in the middle of my sophomore year, which was a little rough for me because I was still trying to find my way in high school. So that first year, I wasn't trying to make friends. I wasn't talking to anybody, nothing. I ate my lunch all by myself the very first year. I wasn't even trying to have anybody have lunch with me. And what was funny about that was my next year in that school, a lot of people were like, we really wanted to talk to you and approach you, but you just didn't seem approachable, like you wanted to be friends with anybody. And I kind of, it's like I did, but I didn't, because I was kind of like, oh God, I'm in this school. I was away from friends who I had been with for years. The high school that I went to had majority of the friends that I went to elementary school with as well. And that elementary school, I came in I think it was like a 4th or 5th grade. So I was with them all the way up to like part of my sophomore year in high school. So then to be transitioned not only to another school, but out of state, as a 15-year-old girl, I was a little pissed off about that. But I trusted you, I loved you, and I knew you were always doing what was best for me. So it just took me a year of adjustment, but I got it together and I was fine ever since then. And yeah, I appreciated you sending me to that school later, because that was a school where I had some courses that I probably wouldn't have had anywhere else at any other school, because when I spoke to other kids or other adults,
Which school?
That
Which
was Mission
school?
Bay.
Mission Bay. Okay.
Hmm. And what I loved about that school is it was kind of like the school that I ended up with India and Kamali, my daughters, going to as well in terms of Ocean Charter. The way this one particular teacher taught, he not only taught the subject, but he immersed you in the subject. In
Right.
fact, just about all of my teachers did as well. They all immersed you in the subject, but it was, we had, it was a class that was half of the semester was government and the other half was economics. So with the government side, he made us actually vote in a president, and then we had the House, and then we had Congress, and then we had,
Right.
you know, not only were we having these roles, but we were learning about these roles as well. We ended up impeaching our president because he just got completely out of control.
Right. Right.
But that
Right.
was, I mean, that was a process that has recently happened. So I kind of understand like what was going on with that. And then the second half, which was economics, he made us like purchase stocks. We didn't actually purchase them, but we had to pick stocks. We had to follow our stocks. We had to let him know like how much we had made within a week, whether our stocks lost money, whether our stocks gained
Right.
money. We could also sell those stocks and get different stocks. We had to let him know. So it was like I kind of learned about the stock exchange too, something that a lot of
Mhm.
kids, you know, that looked like me had no clue. Because in that class, I think I was. I think no, I was like one of two black kids. One girl was
Right.
biracial, and then there were
Right.
like maybe one or two Latinos, and the rest were white. So
Mhm.
that was a class that a lot of kids that looked like me didn't get because, like, in fact, the school itself didn't have a lot of black population. Majority of the black kids were bussed in. So it was like stuff like that that I learned over the ages. I mean, I went to a school where like ghetto kids were. So I had that. I went to school where like little snotty kids were. I went to school where the preppy kids were. So in this school, it was like everything. So
Right.
I got along with everybody just fine because there were like ghetto kids there. There were like preppy kids there, or snotty kids. I had kids who, like, almost all the white kids had cars by the time they were 16. And the only
Right.
people who were walking were like the Latino kids or the black kids because they were still on the bus. And they didn't just have cars. They had like one friend of mine, her first car was a BMW. So it was like stuff like that, you know?
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
just gave me the opportunity to just, you know, meet all kinds of people and see all kind of stuff, you know, that I would not have been exposed to if I had just stayed put in one school with one particular type of student in the school. So I
Right.
appreciate that.
And I think that that wasn't a school that I sought out. It was more like that was we lived in San Diego at that time in Pacific Beach, and I think that was the school that you had to go to.
Right.
So a lot of times these were schools that were in the community that we lived in, and so that was the school you went to. Now, if you had went to that school and I felt that there was something incorrect, then I definitely would have set it up so you would go to another school. And part of that was just wanting you to have a really good education. Now, a lot of times this still goes on in the black schools. They don't have all the resources that they have in white schools. And that's another whole subject altogether, because I was fortunate to go to Hyde Park. And during that time, professors, children from the University of Chicago went to that school. So a lot of resources were in there. And the same thing, the schools you went to, professors from the University of Chicago, children went there, so resources were put in. So I was always looking for places that had a lot of resources that were there to really expose you to all these different things. And a lot of times you don't really realize that until you become an adult. And then you have these conversations and you start talking about, your high school, I had this experience and that experience, and people are like, what are you talking about?
About right.
I talked about the language lab, and they were like, what language lab? I was like, where you put the
Right.
headphones on and you speak, and the
Right.
teacher would be like, no.
Right.
Or Olympic-sized pool, or track,
Right.
or golf, or archery, or in those kinds of things that the other schools in Inglewood in Chicago didn't have, or CBS didn't have, that we had in Hyde Park. And so I
Yep.
just wanted you just to expose you to those kinds of things. And it also allows us to have these different kind of conversations that some people are not able to have with their mothers as well. My thing was always like exposing children to a lot of different things, and then letting the child decide. It's kind of like us eating sushi, or going to Indian restaurants, or German restaurants, or French restaurants, all these different places, just to see what their food is like, what their culture is like, just so you would just be exposed to that, and also going to African restaurants and soul food and all those kind of things,
Right.
just to give you a nice rounded um, exposure to what the world, is like. And I
I
think,
will say one thing. One of the school, well, I went to Whitney Young for like a little bit before I got transferred out of state. But you know that saying I went to that high school still holds clout in Chicago. It's the strangest thing. Like I will tell people, "Oh yeah, I went to Whitney Young." You're like, "Oh, you one of them smart girls." Like what? What are you talking about? I was like, you just get into school like anybody else,
yeah,
but it
right,
still holds like some sort of clout in Chicago, and it's just the weirdest thing to me.
right, right. And the same thing, me going to Hyde Park doing the 60s was like, oh wow, your family had money or something. Like, no, they
Right.
did not.
Just
But
got into
that's
school.
that's but in the Midwest they go into that whole thing about status. So
Yes.
that's a big thing in the Midwest. And it's funny, going from state to state and living in state to state, you see these whole different kind of status things
Yeah.
from different states, which is real interesting. And so that's why I like traveling and what have you, because you get to see how people live and how they process things. And us, I think growing up, talk about. I think I would do things a little differently. I think I kind of gave you some, choices. I do believe in choices. I definitely believe in choices, and their children should have choices, and their children should also be able to voice how they feel about things. I think the parents have the final say, but I think children should be able sometime to be able to say whether or not they agree. Like one time we were in, I think, seventh grade, and you came to me and you said, you know what? I'm not going to any summer programs. I'm not going to art school. I'm not going to anything. I just want to stay home during the summer and just sleeping as long as I want to, and then get up and go and hang out with my friends. And I was always putting you like these art classes and this kind of program here and this. And you were like, I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I was thinking, yeah, I think you were, I don't know if you were in eighth grade or seventh grade, and I'm like, yeah, she knows how to come in and out of the house. She's been doing that for years, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think she's okay. And I was just like, okay. And you were like, fine. And so I think I could have said, no, you need to be in a program. And, sometimes I think parents just have children, all these different programs all the time, and don't allow the child to be creative. And then sometimes just to just sit and read and just do nothing because you were always in, programs during the year. So I think for you that year you were able to go out and you did your biking or whatever it is you did with you and your friends. I don't know. And one thing I would say though is important that Stephanie was always a child that she always told me where she was going to go. She was always where she was going to be. I didn't have to worry about her running in and out or someplace she wasn't. So that made it a lot easier. And so it made it easier to travel and do whatever it is we had to do, because from when she was a young child, we had kind of set up that kind of relationship. And I was always talking about your word is bond. And one thing I didn't like anybody was about being a liar. And so she knew that how I felt about being lying. So she would just be truthful about where she was going to go and what she was going to do. And I could say yay or nay. And then we would, move on from that. But how did you
This is
feel about
before
that
cell
choice?
phones and all that too. So I had to be where I said I was because there was no calling unless I found a payphone.
Right. So, but how did you feel about having those choices or not having choices?
I was happy. I mean, it gave me some responsibility. I don't know. I always thought it was weird as a kid. Before I did anything, I always thought like, what would my mom think about this? How does this reflect on my family? So stuff like
Mhm.
that. And even as a kid, I was like, this is kind of weird to be asking that. Most kids just do stuff, but I knew I
Right.
had already told you. And plus, being the daughter of a single mom, it was like I
Mhm.
had to I felt I had to tell the truth because it was just you and me. So I couldn't, like screw you over, which was basically screwing myself over. I wanted to be trusted. I wanted to for you to have to let me do some things that I wanted to do. And in order to gain that trust, I had to tell the truth and I had to just own up to whatever it was that I had going on, whether it was wrong or whatever. I mean, a few times I got busted not being in before the street lights came on. I just dealt with the consequences of that.
Right.
But when I told you I was going somewhere, that's where I was going. I didn't deviate. I didn't sneak anywhere. I didn't sneak over to anybody's house or anything like that. So I was just, that was just my thing about being honesty. I think you drilled that into me. So I also don't like anybody who lies to me. So if you're a liar or a thief, I'm done. That's it. And I instill that in my girls too. Just tell me the truth and deal with the consequences. You want to
Right.
be treated with maturity and with
Respect.
respect, then you have to come correct.
Right. The question is how you deal with people who did have the same family values as you. Who didn't have the same or did? It says did. Okay, so talk about people that didn't have the same family values as you.
I took them on face value. I didn't change who I was as a person. I mean, I had friends who did all kind of like devious stuff. I had one friend, I went to a store with her and she stole something. And I didn't realize that until we got out the store. Needless to say, I went in on her about that. She didn't return it, but I never went to any other place with her. So
Right.
some stuff you just take. I mean, that was a value. I don't steal, so I'm not hanging with somebody who does. I had another person who was a friend at the time, and she stole something from me, and I saw it in her house, and I made comment, and she was like, "Oh, somebody else gave me that. You could have it, for to replace what was stolen." And I was like, "Why would I take something from you if it's not mine?" I didn't hang
Right.
out with her anymore either. So it was stuff
Mhm.
like that went on. Anybody who didn't have the values that I have, I took them at face value. I mean, like some people, their parents let them do whatever. That's fine and dandy. I'm not doing whatever. I'm doing whatever it was I told you I was going to do or whatever my rules were.
Right.
And sometimes I would say something to them and be like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. This is
Right.
the better thing. Sometimes they took that advice, sometimes they didn't. If they were just too outrageous, I didn't hang with them anymore. They could be my friend, but my friend from a distance. We weren't going nowhere. We weren't hanging out, nothing like that. So,
Right.
that's how it was. My values didn't change, but I didn't try to infringe them upon anybody else either. I just let them be
Mhm.
who they were and let them show me who they were. Just like I showed them who I was. You want to litter on the street, you ain't hanging with me. And I used to tell people all the time, boo, you need to pick that up. It's a trash can right up here. So I was always, because you had taught me always about my community, my environment, the reflection on myself as well as my
Right.
family. Because I mean, back in the day, you used to be in the streets, you didn't know who knew your parents and who knew you or
Right.
who was watching you, and you did not want that to come back to your mother.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That was the same way, and that's how I was raised in terms of you represent the colored people, you represent yourself, and you represent the family.
The family name was
Yes,
a
the family
was a big
name.
thing.
Right. And so you were always cognizant or mindful of when you did something that you were representing the family. And I think people have gotten away from that. And it's kind of like individual. I just do my own thing, but it's like, no, you don't do anything. It was always like a
Right,
collective that you
right.
represent all of us. So when you go out there acting the ass, then that reflects on me,
On everyone.
on everyone.
Because
And
I
so
mean, eventually someone will meet your parent and be like, "Oh, I remember you, little girl. Your mama, that's how she must be too." And then they already have a preconceived notion about your parent, and that may not be how they are. I mean, having worked in a school, I saw that
mhm,
firsthand. Like, I used to try to tell kids, you are a reflection of your parent, of your family. No, I'm not. I'm my own person. Okay, you just keep thinking that because how you act, and when your mom or dad comes in here,
mhm,
that's how the person's going to treat them, like the way
yeah.
you act, without even giving them a chance to say anything.
So a question is, when your community started changing, how did that affect you and why didn't you mix up in it? So like with drugs, why didn't you mix up in it?
Because you know what? I already knew. First of all, when I went to this is silly. When I went to the dentist, it took so much to numb me up. I knew like heavy drugs were gonna be needed for me to get any kind of high. Plus,
Yeah,
as a kid, my high was buying clothes and shoes. So
right.
I figured like wasting money on drugs was stupid when I could have a cute pair of shoes and a cute little outfit. I did go to when I went to my high school in San Diego, I went to a party like my senior year, and the drug of
Mm,
choice at that time was cocaine. So, you know, I had a lot of people around me who were like acquaintances and some were friends and was like, you know, and they did a lot of drinking too, because it was a school predominantly with white people. So they do a lot of drinking in high school, at least at that school. So
mm,
like I said, their drug of choice was cocaine, and they offered, and I'm like, no, thank you. And the thing is, I think when you establish who you are from the beginning, people respect that. They don't keep pressuring
yeah.
you because they didn't. I had that
Mhm.
same dilemma when I was in eighth grade. We went over, my best friend and I went over a girlfriend's house and she was smoking weed. And she's like, you want some? And I was like, no. And my best friend was like, yeah. And I was like, wait, you know, you don't have to do that if you don't want to.
Right.
And she was like, um, and then she looked at the girl, and the girl was like, "You're not gonna do it," and she did it anyway. And I was like,
Mhm,
"Whatever. That's between the two of y'all." In fact, I don't even like the smell of it, so I'm out. And I
mhm,
left, but
mhm.
I didn't lose either one of them in terms of an acquaintance or friend, or even their respect. They were the same with me because that's
Right.
who I was. I wasn't going to pander to somebody else. I wasn't going to fall in with someone else because they were doing it or everybody was doing it. And that's the thing I think a lot of kids today don't realize you can still be that person and still have those friends if that's what you want, because they'll respect that. They'll be like, oh
Right.
man, you know, she don't do that or he don't do that,
Right.
you know, just whatever. Don't even ask because they ain't gonna do that, you know.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. But you
Exactly.
can still hang with them if that's what you want to do. And it doesn't change the relationship whatsoever. If
Right.
you know who you are and have integrity and who you are, other people will respect it too.
Right. And I think the same thing for me. Sometimes I wonder why I didn't do this. It would just be so crazy sometimes. But my thing was, I have a child. I'm responsible for that child, and I think that was drilled into me. And when I was a child, that you are when you have a child, that you are responsible for that child. And so I never did partake in any kind of drugs or anything like that, because first of all, my father was always telling me about a woman has to be in control, and when you get drunk or you're out of it with drugs, you're not in control, and if you're not in control, anything can happen. And so that was all drilled to me about being in control. Or sometimes I think it can go sideways, because sometimes I'm in relationship and sometimes I'm still trying to be in control. So you gotta learn to
To
balance
balance that out.
balance that out. But I really didn't get involved in that. And there was a lot going on in the 60s. And a friend of mine, like years later, they were like, oh, yeah, so and so was selling weed and stuff. And I was like, I never knew about that. They were like, oh, girl, we know you wasn't into that. So we didn't even bring it to you. And so they had some kind of stuff going on behind me that I didn't even
Right.
know was going on, because they knew that wasn't my thing. And that's what I tell people. If you are rooted in whatever your thing is, and if you're rooted in that, then people will respect you no matter where you go and what you do. And
Right.
I think with you and I, we just established some kind of baseline about, I was the mother. We weren't friends. We were mother daughter that had a good relationship. And I think sometimes the mothers try to become friends and hanging out. You like,
Right.
we didn't go when you got older. We didn't go hang out at the club. Or I didn't go to parties with you or anything, like that. And so I
Right.
think sometimes we had that demarcation. I think you have that same thing with your children. And I think as we get older, of course, it seems like our ages are getting closer and closer as we,
I
move up.
know.
But there's still that mother daughter thing. And I think when they, some people, their kids are real, they're just so cute. And they let them do whatever it is they want them, let them do whatever the child wants to do. And then when you get to be 13, you try to become the mother, and that just doesn't work. You have to, as the child is raising up, there's some guidelines that you have to provide. I didn't believe in beating you and all that
Right.
kind of stuff, because that's one thing I didn't like as a child, to be hit. So I definitely didn't want to hit, and I know you didn't do that with your children. So it was important that we have those conversations, because I grew up with a father who was into conversation. My mother was more like hitting, but my father was into, and he never hit us. He was always into having a conversation, and I felt the same way, that you can just talk to a child and say, like, what's going on. And I think a lot of times we don't ask children what is going on. We just assume certain things. And sometimes when you ask them, then you can kind of figure out that when they tell you that, you're able to figure out, okay, this is what we can do. And then sometimes we have to say, no, you can't do that. And this is why you can't do that. Some people are like, I just because, I'm your mother and I just said, and
Right.
that's the way it is. Well, sometimes, you need to kind of give a little why you think
A little
this,
background.
a little background.
Right.
Sometimes it's just like, I can't tell you right now, but no, you can't go or whatever. So I
Right.
think that's important, just to kind of have those conversations with your daughter, and no competition. I don't think we never competed, like,
No.
I'm
Well,
not gonna,
because like it was mother, daughter, child, and mom. It wasn't like sisters or anything
right,
like that. So there is no competition whatsoever. I think, like you were saying, you have to start in the beginning. Well, I mean, especially during the teenage years, man. I mean, I'd already set up a foundation with my kids, but when they got to be teenagers, and this is when these TV shows really started to change a little bit, and kids, they were
right,
showing kids like talking back to their parents and saying all
right.
kind of stuff. My kids tried that one time, and I said, let me just tell you this.
Hmm.
This is not TV. You are not that character on TV. I am not your friend. I'm your mother. And I said, and as your mother, what I say goes, because right now I am doing what is best for you, what I think is best for you, and I'm doing the best that I can. I mean, that right there is how you have that conversation. You don't just say, do what I say, and that's it.
Hmm.
But you also have to lead by example too. My kids
Exactly.
didn't really run around and do a lot of stuff that a lot of young ladies that today do, because I wasn't bringing home multiple people talking about this your uncle so and so, this your uncle so and so, this your uncle. I
Right,
mean, that to me, that's a messy bad look. But you know what? As a mother, you do what you feel you need to do is best for yourself. If that works for you, then fine. But it did not work for me, and I did not want to set that up where my children would be coming in with multiple people in the house, telling me what they were going to do. So that wasn't going to happen. It was about respect. I respected them just like they respected me, but I was still their mom, and what I say was the last word. There were certain things that they just could not do. You can't ask me last minute to go anywhere. That's not going to happen. If you
right.
ask me the day of, the answer is always no. And I used to tell them that. Let me just tell you this right now. If
Hmm.
the event is today, you do not have all the details, the answer is no. So don't even come to me. Of course, as teenagers, yeah, they still
Hmm.
came, and the answer was always still no. And then I would
Right,
back that up with, what's my motto? It's last minute. I don't have all the details. Exactly. And why are we having this conversation?
right, right, right,
So I
right,
mean, that's the kind of stuff that you have to set up with your kids. I mean, my kids, everybody thinks their kids are cute, but I didn't think my kids were so damn cute that they could get away with anything. No,
right,
other people thought my children were cute and beautiful too. Yeah, that's fine for you, but no, they still not gonna do that.
right.
No, they still don't need privilege over somebody else. So I mean,
Hmm.
there was my children are lighter than me, so there was like a whole thing with that as well. So
Right,
they had this certain look too, and people used to draw into that and say different things about that. But I was like, no, I don't want you to be that girl.
right,
So I just treated you, like I think a parent should, no matter what your child looks like. You have the most beautiful child in the world, and everybody can tell you this is the most beautiful child in the world. But no, you need to set boundaries for that child in the beginning, so she don't come back to you and tell you how cute she is, and this is why she can do everything, and you can't tell her nothing.
right.
So
And I think, you and I were talking about, I remember you asking me, when you got an adult, like, Mom, did you ever date when I was a kid? And I was like, yeah. And you were like, I never saw anybody. I was like, how many men I didn't need to see? Okay, so I was not, I didn't bring them home. And so I don't think you need to bring, when you're dating these men home, unless you're in some kind of relationship that's going to
right,
last. But some of them didn't, and so why would I keep bringing them home? You went to
right,
your grandmother's house or your uncle's house or something like that, and you spent the night, or I had a babysitter or whatever. And so I think that's important, because a lot of times you have men running in and out, then that level of respect kind of changes, and then later on, then that gets thrown back into your face. And so I think it's just real important. You didn't have any
yeah,
uncles and all that kind of craziness,
mhm,
because I wanted that level of respect, and I wanted to respect you as well. And so I think that's what, mothers have to really look at, that whole level of respect. You also had chores. I thought it was important
right.
that
Oh yeah,
and then your children had chores. It was very important that they have chores, and if it's mop on the floor or cleaning the bathroom, whatever it is, those chores have to be done before you can start talking about you're gonna go out. And there's so many children now that don't have any chores.
no, They
And
don't
so,
do anything.
they don't do anything. They don't know how to cook for themselves. They
No.
don't know how to do laundry. And then that becomes a whole kind of thing where we're not training them even to take care of themselves.
Themselves.
And I think that's important as a woman to know. And I hate when women say, I can't cook. That's
That's
not
not cute.
proud
It
of.
is not cute. That's nothing to be proud of, and it's not cute. That means you can't even take care of yourself, sweetheart. And that's the basic. You should be able to feed
Right.
yourself. If nothing else, you should be able to boil some water and put a hot dog in there. And there's a
Right.
lot of girls who don't know, or women who don't know how to do that. They don't even know how to do their laundry. So it's
Right.
like you can't even keep yourself clean. This is crazy. These are
Right.
basic things that your kids should know. And and a lot of moms look to schools nowadays to do stuff like that. That's not the school's job, it's your job. It's not the staff at the school to keep up with your child's hygiene.
Right.
Why should I tell you your child needs their clothes washed, or your child needs to have deodorant, or your child needs a bath? This is stuff
Right.
that you should just be teaching them. They should know how to do certain things. And guess what? Another thing that still bothers me to this day is people not being open. Not being
Mhm.
open to try new things, not being open to new things that are introduced to them. Ooh, that's nasty. I'd never allowed my children to say that. You cannot say you don't like something until you have tasted it. When you
Right.
taste it, then you can say, I don't care for it, but you're not going to tell me it's nasty. That's
Right.
a big time no with me as well. You
Mhm.
can say, I don't particularly like this. I don't care for that. I didn't find out, as a matter of fact, I used to make a soup that I loved, and I thought one of my children liked it, but she never did. And she didn't tell me until she was an adult. And I asked her, I said, why didn't you say anything? And she was like, because I knew you weren't making no other meal, and that's what dinner was. So she knew the rules were set up. This is what dinner, I'm not making several meals for you. There will always
Right.
be a vegetable there. There will always be a protein there. There will always be something healthy
Right.
and good for you there too. And you're not going to say, I don't like that unless you give me a reason, or you've already tasted it. I tasted it and it doesn't
Right.
taste good to me. Then we'll find an alternative, but it's going to be on the vegetable level. So
Right. Right. And I
yeah.
think that's important too, to have those, like I said, those kind of baseline for your children. We always sat down and had a meal. We always came together as in holiday, and we all cooked together,
Right.
and even though Kamali was not one for really cooking, but she did the chopping. So you're not cooking no special, meal or specialty for yourself, and you get to do chopping. So
Right.
everybody participated in whatever it was that we were doing. And I think even with me growing up, even with my brothers, they had to participate. So everybody had something. Like one of my brothers was really good at pancakes. One of them was good at making the cake. One of them, he said he couldn't do nothing, so he washed the dishes. But everybody had to participate, and I think that's important to do that when you have a family, and also in your mother-daughter relationship. And I think a lot of times we did things. We got hair braided together, or someone came in and braided our hair, and we'd have these conversations. And I remember one time when you were young, I took you to the doctor, and you were coming of age, and I think you had your cycle. And I remember telling the doctor, okay, I don't know, because sometimes girls don't like to say everything to their mother. So I told doctor anything she wants, if she needs anything, if it's birth control pills. And I think you might have been in 8th grade or whatever it is. Because I'm a realist, and sometimes girls do have sex when they're young. And so I'm like, give it to her, or whatever it is, and I will pay for it or whatever. And I did the same thing with you, and then got some women in the community, if you remember, that I brought together and said, these are women that I trust. And if you don't feel like you can come to me, you can come to these women, and these women will provide you with counsel because I trust them. And I told those same women, if there's any money involved, you can come back to me and I will reimburse you, and I will not ask you what the money was for. And I think we did that to both your daughters as well.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes girls, because when I was in worked at a high school, I had all these young girls coming to me because there were things going on that they couldn't feel that they could talk to their mothers. And so I had to help them out in a lot of different crazy kind of ways
Yeah, I did too.
when they couldn't go to their mother, and they didn't have any counsel around them. So I think it's important that young women have a counsel around them they can go to talk to, that can provide them with the support and help them. Because a lot of times, I had a friend of mine that got pregnant and ended up dying because she took some kind of crazy something, I don't know what the concoction was, but it just backed up in her system and she ended up dying from it because she wanted to have an abortion. And so you need to have someone that you can go to and talk about reproductive health if you think you cannot talk to your parents about it. So I wanted to provide that with you, and then for your to my granddaughters and your daughters as well, because I think sometimes women get in situations because they don't know who to go to and who to talk to as well. So I think that's important to do that.
Yeah, very,
And so,
very important.
did you think that was helpful for you, or did you have to go to those people or not?
You know what? It was helpful to know that there was a backup if I ever needed it. I never needed it because I could pretty much come to talk to you about
Right.
anything and everything, and know that I wouldn't be steered incorrectly. That you were telling
Right.
me what was best for me and the best advice at the time for whatever the situation was. But I mean, I think I was considered like probably one of those goody two shoes. I never really got into a lot of stuff or a lot of
Mhm.
trouble because I just, once again, it goes back to you were my only parent at the time. So I just didn't want to mess up that situation. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, um, I didn't want to be in foster care. I didn't want to live with anybody else. I wanted to be with you. So I was all about fostering our relationship and making sure that you could trust me and that I could, I was able to come
Mhm.
to you with whatever. So I like I said, I never went to anybody else, but it's always nice to have that as a possible backup. So I know I had that for my girls too. I don't think I ever heard anyone say that they went to them for anything,
Mhm.
but I never, they may have and may have had some
Right.
conversations that I didn't know about. My daughters are pretty open for, India Kamali are pretty open in terms of having conversations now. Although Kamali told me there's still some stuff that she hasn't told me. That she said when I'm old enough, then she'll tell me. I'm kind of scared of what that is because I'm like, I'm twice your age, Kamali. But
Right. Right.
she's just funny like that. But yeah, no, I know they did appreciate that there were other people in the community that they could talk to about stuff. Usually for them, their other person was you, so
Oh,
you were
right.
always the backup for me. If they couldn't talk to me, they would go to you and be like, "Can you talk to mommy? Can you tell her?"
Mhm. Mhm.
Whatever. So that
And
was
a lot
fun.
of times when young women have these questions, they're not that difficult when
Yeah,
when they ask you, you'd be like, "That's all it is," and what you
right.
need to do, da 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 da. So it's not that hard, but I think it's about being as an adult, being open for your child. I remember um, one of your daughters was not dating or whatever. We were like, well, I don't know, is she a lesbian? And and so we just kind of had that conversation and said, look, we're always about being open. I want people to be happy. And if you are a lesbian, that's okay.
Right.
We can deal with that too. And so we just kind of had that conversation. And she's like, I'm not a lesbian. What are you talking about? We were like, oh, well, you haven't really dated. You haven't really said anything. And then it
Right.
turned out she had boys around. She just didn't bring what we were, whatever it was. So it was funny.
Heck,
Uh,
because I didn't bring anybody around, she thought I was a lesbian for a while. She
yeah,
thought I had a
right.
lesbian face.
Oh God! Somebody said talk about when you were on TV with the weight loss challenge. It looks
Oh
like it was
God.
challenging, but you all seem to bond through the process. God,
Oh God.
that is
The
crazy.
National Body Challenge. Yes. That was something that I secretly signed the family up for and didn't tell you guys until I actually got an audition. Then I had to fess up that I had like
Right,
written in and said that we all needed to lose weight. India and Kamali were not happy about that because they didn't want to get on TV saying that they were overweight or had any kind of weight issues whatsoever. I mean, at the time when I look back, they really weren't that heavy, especially compared to a lot of kids now. But
we, we
in
we weren't
California, they
heavy,
were
but we were
considered
talking
heavy.
about we didn't want to get to that point. We were just overweight
Right,
a little bit. So
right. So yeah, that because I think we have a really good relationship amongst the generations, that was a pretty easy filming. In fact, even like the producers and stuff were just like, God, you guys are so such a nice, happy family. And it was no fakeness or anything about that. But I
yeah,
think it's respect amongst one another as well. And the fact that we already have that really good bond. And that's something that I didn't realize was such a big deal till I talked to other ladies that are my age that have no relationship with their parent whatsoever, have a really bad one. And I try not to show my shock, but I know I do, because I'm always like, what? What do you mean you don't like your mom? What do you mean you don't talk to your mom? What do you mean your mom doesn't do this? You don't do that? And I'm like, my mother and I do everything. I call my mom like every day, pretty much, especially when we're not in the same state or even in the same home or anything. I'm like, then it was kind of like, well, maybe I call my mom too much, but I mean, I think when we did that, the process in the beginning was a little rough because people were like ticked off at me about that. But after we got into it, it was fine. We had fun with it. I mean, even when it was hard, when we were working out and stuff like that, we still managed to make each other laugh and have a good time through that. We still talk about it pretty well to one another now. Like, no one has any kind of animosity or anything. No one hates me for doing that. But
well, we learned about reality. Reality TV is not reality TV.
No, we did learn that.
We had to go back and, okay, act like you're shocked again. We were like, what?
Right.
Like, go back.
I told people, I'm like, there is no reality in reality TV. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, we had a call sheet. You only get that when you have like, it was no lines or anything, but you don't have a call sheet if it's reality TV. They're just filming whatever's going on. But no, they have a setup for everything. And I'm like, how do you think when someone opens the door, you get to see the person on the other side of the door? Because they're already in the house. So that means that person in the house already knew you were coming. And they was like, wow, I didn't think about that. Yeah. So that was eye-opening in terms of how reality TV really is. It doesn't exist whatsoever. There's nothing real in reality.
Yes, we learned a lot about TV and whatever. I mean, we ended up doing a commercial, and just let you all know, man, you can make a lot of money in a commercial. We got a nice little check for a little commercial that we did.
But it's not easy. Like I give my props and kudos to actors. I had like 5 lines to learn, and it took me forever because the whole vernacular and speech wasn't mine. So I had to pretend that this was my speech. So it was never coming out correctly. I was always saying things the way I would say them. So it took a few takes for that one.
Right. But it was fun. And I think part of it
was fun.
It was fun. Part of it, with our relationship, and even I think my whole family, extended family relationship, is about we laugh a lot. So now there's 3, 4, 3. How many generations of us living together now? Three generations of us living together now. And we just laugh. We come together and we look at certain things on TV, and we have our guilty pleasures, and we look at them and we just laugh through the whole show. Or we look at movies, or someone to see a movie. So you need to see this movie. We'll go in each other's room and we'll look at these movies. But it's about respecting each other. And then sometimes somebody will say something that you think is really, really crazy, but it's not your relationship. And so you just be like, huh, okay. And then sometimes I'll say something, Steph's like she'll shake her head, like, don't get involved. And then I was like, you're right, don't get involved. And so I think having that respect and letting people do what they need to do. And then sometimes we do a little guidance and say, that's kind of interesting, or, well, I don't think I'd go for that, or whatever. And so that kind of keeps us out of each other's business, because we do have our own personal business, but we do have things that we do together, because we all live in a house together. But we've done that before, in Chicago. There was 4 generations, because at that time my grandmother was around, so my granddaughters got to be around their great grandmother, and so there's 4 generations, and so that was a lot of fun. But I think it's all about mutual respect. It's all about letting people have their own time. And sometimes you can see that sometimes people will go in their room, and then like my brother will come and say, is Steph okay? And I was like, yeah, I think she's tired. He's like, okay. He doesn't go beating on the door. Hey, what are you doing in the room? Or he'll knock on my door. He said, you all right? And I said, yeah, I'm just tired today. And he'll be like, oh, okay. And so we check on each other, but we don't invade. And I think that's important too. And even with the mother-daughter relationship, you can check in on your daughter, but you don't need to check in on her, especially when like our granddaughters, like in their 20s. We don't check in on them every day. Now they can call us every day. That's fine, but we're not going to keep checking in on them, because it's like an invasion. Now they can call us every day. In fact, they do when they walk their dogs. So it's kind of like you're walking along with them. So they'll call us up and we'll have these kind of conversations, what's going on and what's happening, and then they're they feel very comfortable. So now they're sharing us with their friends. So my friend is getting ready to buy a car and he wants to know, can he call you because you used to work with financial wellness? So can he call you with his credit? Or my friend is sick and she doesn't have health care. So I know you know about herbs. What can you do? And so we help their friends out as well. But the thing is about us trusting each other. It's about us being open and honest. And I think that's what mothers need to do with your child. Don't be shocked by anything. And sometimes they tell you stuff, you being like, Lord, I'm going to scream, but no, I'm just going to be real quiet.
But keep it all inside.
Keep it all inside, because I'm thinking, what the hell are they doing? Why the hell? My granddaughter got an apartment and had like 5 roommates or something.
In a one bedroom.
One time it was 1 bedroom because everybody kept getting put out or their lease was up, and it was just really crazy. And we just like, okay. And it all worked out, and they worked it through. But we didn't go in and judge them. We didn't go and say, what the hell? We're just like, okay, just these are some things you need to think about. Everybody's gonna pay their rent. Is everybody gonna do whatever? Just think about these things, and then kind of pull back and then let them do whatever it is they need to do. I think that's the most important thing to do.
Yeah.
So Stella, let's see. When did you realize that you were no longer a child? I know when I realized you're no longer a child. When did you realize you were no longer?
Oh, when you realized when I was no longer a child?
Oh, I know when I did.
I think when I told you I was pregnant with my first child, that's when I realized I was no longer a kid. I felt like a real adult, like I'm in charge of another little person. Yeah, I was so scared to tell you, even though I was living on my own. I had my own job. I had my own car. I was still so afraid to tell you. Like I had messed up. I was in my 20s. Huh? I don't know. I just felt like, oh God, like I wasn't married. So I think that's the thing that kind of got me like, oh God, I have to tell her I'm pregnant. And, and then you were like, you have your own job, you have a car, you have your own place. Like, what is your issue? So that was my like grown up moment.
Yeah. I think when you moved out, that's when I was like, oh my God, did she lock her doors? Oh my God, I hope she's got the windows locked. I hope she got, I was just so nervous that first night, when moved out.
Oh, I'm looking at this next question about competition around beauty, body image, and attention from men. No, there was never any competition. We're mother and daughter. We're on 2 different levels. So we're 2 different type of men. I'm not competing with my mother for men. She's not competing with me for men or anything like that. We also have 2 different types of tastes as well. So men that she likes are not men that I like, and vice versa. So I mean, it was never anything like that. It wasn't either with my daughters as well. And I think they're beautiful young ladies. There was never, like, first of all, why am I competing with a child? My child, which is to me, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm going to offend somebody with this, but that's sick to me. Why are you trying to pick up your child's boyfriend who was also a child?
Right.
To me, in my eyes, that makes you a pedophile. I'm not competing with my daughters.
You don't want to live your life through your child. See, that's what I see a lot of people doing, living their life through your child. And I think in terms of body image, we're always dealing with our weight and
God, we've been back and forth. But the thing I will say about this is when we each are in whatever weight that we like, we do compliment each other, whether we're there or not. We always say, you look good, this is cute, you should try this. We were never women that put each other down. That's just not our MO at all. We were all about lifting one another up, and that goes for all of us. But what I like is we're also not fake. We're honest with it too. Because my youngest child, if you got some stuff on, and as much as she dresses crazy, if you have some stuff on, she will tell you right away. But it's subtle the way she does it. Like she'll just say, "Oh, that's what you're gonna wear, huh? Okay." And then you're like, "How do you like this hairstyle?" That's what she does. So it's kind of like, okay, what's wrong with it? Right. I mean, it's not insulting, but it's just like little subtle stuff where you're like, okay, something's off or whatever. But no, there's no competition. There's nothing like that. And I think because we're all, at least I think you made me well grounded, so I think I made them well grounded too. And I think we also have an appreciation of everybody's beauty.
Right,
So we're
right,
not to the exclusion of anybody else. Like we can compliment, I've complimented other women on the street. My daughters have as well, and we've been complimented too. But we're cognizant of everybody's beauty and what everybody brings to the table. So therefore, we're not concentrated on ourselves, nor are we in competition with anybody.
right. And I think that is most important with women. In terms of competing against each other. First of all, I don't compete. I do not like competition at all. I'm about collaborative and I'm about working together. So you won't find me competing with anything. I even hate games and all that. I don't like that competition kind of. It just makes me crazy because then someone always feels sad, or someone feels with this or whatever and all that. It's just too much, man. I like to just work together, and I think that's just easier. And I think part of this being growing up and talking about it and the family working together. And so we just always feel about working together. I mean, that's like when someone needs something in the family, we be like, okay, usually it's me. All right, we need to pony up because India needs this. And then my brothers and everybody will pony up, or this is what's going on. We need to pony up for this, or whatever it is. And so we are used to working together as a collective, as a family, when somebody's trying to do something. Indian went away to college, well, everybody got pony up. This girl's going to college, we got to help her. And so we all did. And so she just said to me the other day, she's like, can you imagine? Now I'm an adult, I don't have to ask anybody for money or anything. And I'm like, yeah, we're all happy.
Especially that first year of college. Woo.
Lord. Yeah. So
Lord Jesus.
but now we're mindful that we just help each other. We've always been there. I think a lot of that goes back to my father just setting that up in the beginning when we were children. I think, and we lead by example. And then same thing, with you, and the same thing with your daughters. When you lead by example, I think that's when we're not so much how we talk, do this, but they look at you and then they see what you do, and then it's like, oh, okay. And then that kind of, even when you're out, you leave out a relationship, you're like, this didn't work out, I'm no longer with him or whatever. And the kids are like, oh, okay. But we didn't do a lot of, uncles and all that kind of stuff. This didn't work out. And we moved on, and they're like, oh, okay. And then later they may come back, I thought he was a jerk, or I thought he was whatever, but that's what you liked or whatever. And so we just kind of support each other in wherever we are and whatever we're doing. And I think that's important.
That's
and I think
that's the best mother-daughter relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's about supporting each other. Yeah. You always agree? Not necessarily.
No.
You don't necessarily agree.
I mean, sometimes you have attitudes, and but my thing is, you don't hold grudges. You move forward, and you learn from stuff. And we also don't have any problems apologizing to one another.
Right. I mean, last night, Stephanie and I were talking about the men that we had in our lives. And we started laughing and you start thinking like, what the hell? Why was I with him? And what the hell? And what was I thinking? And what was going on? And those kind of things. So we just sit up and just laugh about it. And then my brother would come and talk about his women, and Lord help us all. And then we just start laughing about it because it's part of an experience. We all realize we're all in our family, very spiritual, and we're all metaphysical. And so we know who we are. And so we do understand that this is just an experience. It's an adventure. It's a journey. And so we don't trip on it because everything is temporary. And so we know eventually you're going to get out of this and you're going to move on another journey. And so when you have these different adventures, you just kind of grow through them and you learn from these experiences. And then you move on to the next one. You can't hold grudges. You have to learn how to forgive people. You have to learn to forgive experiences that you have. And then it's about choices. And sometimes we make some crazy ass choices, and this is the consequence, because there's always a consequence for whatever you do, whether it's good or bad. There's always a consequences for your choices. And so you just have to kind of look at that and then just see, this is where I am. This is the choice I made. And I wouldn't go back on any of the choices that we moved across the country. But kind of like, I just realized I'm just probably part of a nomadic tribe that makes me move and what have you. But from that, I have learned so much about myself and learned so much about the country and about different cultures as well. And I just want to, you know, have that for my child and my grandchildren as well. Now with COVID, we've kind of like locked down on some things because we wanted to do some out of the country things as a unit, you know, all of us, but we weren't able to do that. And it's really interesting because all of us are fire signs, so that makes us really interesting when we travel.
We all get together. We usually like are very amusing for people who are around us when they see us together. You know, they're just like, "Are you guys sisters?" Or no, we're mother, daughter, you know, granddaughter, and they're always surprised at the relationship, how we interact with one another, and the serious humor that goes on.
Right, right. And it's about being human, being humorous. So we're at the end, Stephanie. We talked about mother-daughter relationship. We talked about respect. We talked about you have to start when they're young. About the respect. We talked about mothers are doing the best that they can. And you have to
Yeah,
sacrifice, and you know.
and you know
And
what?
so,
I
what's
just
your
want to
parting
say.
word?
Oh, okay, I'm glad you asked that because I was about to say, I
Mhm.
don't think moms should be so hard on themselves because you're doing the best you can with the knowledge that you have and whatever resources that you have. Don't, you know, there's plenty of times that we as moms really put ourselves down and really dog ourselves out for what's going on in our lives or with our kids. But you know what? You're doing the best that you can with what you were taught and the way you know how. There are books out there about motherhood and all that stuff, but there's no real hand manual for when you have a kid and what happens and all the things that they do and stuff like that. You can only take your own life experiences and work with them and try to mold that little person and then also let them grow into whoever it is that they are. So yeah, my parting words is don't be so hard on yourself. You know, pat yourself on the back. If you got a kid that hasn't really got into any kind of trouble, has graduated school and turned out to be an adult that contributes to society, you got it going on. Those are the basics.
Right. And I just want to thank my brothers too, because Stephanie's father was not around. He chose not to, but I had brothers that were really great in helping to raise her and took her out and did all kinds of things to her. And I think that's part of it. To Uncle Melvin just texted me and said he was checking you out, and my uncle, you know, Uncle Michael that's here. My brothers did help, help, and that helps to provide her with that male perspective. And also, I had some great men that were in my lives that also helped her. Jim really helped her in terms of talking to her about males and what have you. So the quote from my brother today is to wear a mask, because this is a public health issue that we have going on. We want everybody just to be safe. And next week, I have a mother and daughters that have an organization in Miami and called Urgent Inc. And they're going to come in and talk about what they're doing in Miami. And they're doing some fabulous thing with their nonprofit. So I really want you guys to come back next week and find out what's going on in Miami and how they're doing some great stuff there. Thank you so much, Jamila. I'm glad you were here. And Ro, thank you for your questions. I appreciate it. And we will see you next week. So, Steph, thank you so much. I appreciate you, love you, and
Love you
we're going
too.
to keep doing some more things and moving on. All right. See you next week.
All right.